Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today is going to be a very important video that is very near and dear to my heart, and the topic today is going to be how to recover from binge eating. I actually have a little booklet of notes. If you guys want to get a little booklet out and take some notes during this, please do so. Definitely a lot of my information comes from Catherine Hansen, so I don't want to take full credit for any of this, but definitely Catherine Hansen and her book Brain Over Binge. A lot of my notes in this book are from reading her book. In previous videos I have already described kind of what binge eating is, but in case you're new to the channel, basically binge eating is eating large quantities of food in either a short period of time, or sometimes people will drag it on throughout the entire day. But basically it's like thousands and thousands of calories that your body doesn't really need, but you eat them anyways. And in some of my previous videos I talk about the differences between emotional eating and binge eating and compulsive eating and overeating, because there's a lot of different segments here. But binge eating specifically is considered more uncontrollable eating that you feel like you don't have power over. But that is not true. You do have power, and I'm gonna get into that. We're basically gonna start off with why people binge eat. Overall is a survival instinct from your brain trying to keep you alive. What triggers this survival instinct is restricting your food and dieting. So binge eating almost always comes from some form of dieting or restricting your food intake. For me, definitely that's exactly where my binge eating started. I can pinpoint the exact date. I talk about that in my fitness journey video, but that is where it comes from, which is why on my channel, my social media, I will never ever promote any sort of dieting or you need to lose weight, nothing. I will never promote any of that ever again on my channel. Now that I've been educated on that is the cause of binge eating, and I don't want anyone else to ever go through that. So just know that dieting is what leads to binge eating disorder. So when we restrict our food intake and try to lose weight by cutting our food back, our brain sends signals to us that says, give me food, I need food, please feed me. So our brain is innocent here. Our brain is literally just trying to keep us alive. That is where the survival instinct comes from. And then once we eventually give in and give our brain food, it sets us happy endorphins. Now this little paragraph I'm going to read directly out of my notes because I don't want to mess up my words, but another way to look at why we binge is by dividing our brain into two parts. So there's one part of our brain that is us. This is the higher part of our brain, and that is who we are as a person. And then there's the lower part of our brain, which is the primal part of our brain. And the primal part of our brain is part of the brain that is in charge of habits, automatic feelings, and survival instincts. Our primal brain avoids pain and seeks pleasure. Our primal brain is the part of the brain that sends signals to us that we need to binge. So these signals are what Catherine Hansen calls urges. Now urges are what kind of cause each individual binge. So dieting causes the beginning of binge eating, and urges are what continue the binge eating process. So in big summary, the way to stop binge eating is to stop acting on those urges. But I'll get into all of those later. I have a whole section after this about tips on how to stop the urges and how to stop acting on them. I'll get there. These urges are kind of like a glitch in our brain. It feels like we need to binge to survive. You know how when you're getting into that binge state and you can literally feel your brain telling you that you need to binge, and you're not even trying to think about it, but it's kind of like that little voice in your head is constantly telling you, you need to eat, you need to eat, you need to eat. You know, I don't even know how to describe it. You probably won't understand it unless you've experienced it yourself. The reason that these urges cause each binge to happen is because these urges are very uncomfortable. They control all your thoughts. Us as humans, we don't like feeling uncomfortable. A lot of humans are actually very bad at dealing with our emotions. We hate any sort of negative emotion, and we always try to cover it up somehow. To make these negative emotions that we feel along with the urges go away, the easiest way to do that is to act on the urge, which is why we end up binging. It's literally just to make these urges go away, to make the uncomfortable feeling stop. The key to not continuing the binge eating cycle is to learn how to let these urges pass without acting on them, because your lower brain is not the boss of you, okay? Your lower brain is just your primal brain who is telling you to act on these urges, but you can dismiss that. You don't have to act on it. Get excited, guys. You don't have to do it anymore. I feel like just knowing that you really don't have to act on the urge to binge is extremely helpful in itself. Every time you don't act on one of your binge urges, it becomes a little bit easier next time. So you're gonna fail sometimes you're gonna act on them, but just know that the more you practice this, dismissing those urges, the better you're gonna feel, the easier it's gonna get. Catherine Hansen actually has 5 components for dismissing the binge urges, and I'm gonna go through them right now because I think they're very important. Component number 1 is to view your urges to binge as neurological junk. Learn that these urges do not signal a real need. Binging is not a real need that your body needs to survive. Your lower brain just thinks that you need to binge in order to survive. So the first step is really learning to recognize the urges, learning to know what they feel like, and learning to deal with that feeling instead of acting on the urge. I know it sounds a bit confusing, but just bear with me. Number 2 is to separate the higher brain from the urges to binge. So the higher brain, like I said, is who you are as a person. The urges are not a part of your true self. They are simply incorrect brain signals from your lower brain that have created a pattern, a pathway through your brain. Number 3 is stop reacting to urges to binge. Stop letting these urges affect you emotionally. So you know how when you start to kind of feel that urge to binge, you automatically start to get stressed, you get anxious, you kind of start to panic because you're like, oh no, I'm gonna binge, I can feel it. Try to stop letting the urges make you feel all these emotions. I know this sounds so hard. Trust me, when I was learning about all these things, I was like, I can't just dismiss the urge like that. But it really is that simple. Like, I think we put a lot of pressure on binge eating and kind of make it seem like we binge for some sort of deeper reason, but there is no deeper reason. It's simply that your animal brain is telling you that you need to eat more, you have this urge, and you want to act upon this urge to make it go away. There's no deeper meaning. It's not something that happened to you in your childhood. It's not some sort of life crisis that happened. It doesn't come from stress. There isn't a reason. There's not a cause. There's not one thing that causes that binging to start besides dieting. Dieting is the reason, but there's no emotional baggage that goes along with binge eating that cause you to develop this habit. It comes from restrictive eating. So I know I just got off track for a second there, but let's head back to the components. Step 4 is to purely stop acting on the urges to binge, and you do that by implementing the 3 previous steps. So viewing those urges is the first step, separating your higher brain from the urges to binge is the second step, and third is stop reacting on them. 4 is simply doing all those steps. Kind of odd, I know, but that's what Catherine says and I trust her. And then number 5 is get excited about the fact that you are in control. Your lower brain does not control you. I wish I could snap my fingers and we could all stop having these urges, but it's not as easy as just flipping a switch and not having urges anymore. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You're gonna feel really, really shitty some days. We make it seem like we're gonna have this issue forever, and we almost kind of, well, when I say we, I mean me actually. I've almost kind of gone to the point where I'm over it and I've accepted that I'm gonna be like this forever. But no, it doesn't have to be like that. We can change. And for some people, you can change quickly. You can dismiss those urges within a month, a week. Like, some people it's easy. For some of us, it's gonna be a lot harder. I know I read this book a year ago and I'm still here struggling. Okay, so now that we all know that your binges come from urges, I have made a list here, come up with this nice list of ways that we can all learn to dismiss these urges better together. First is don't argue with the urges. Okay, I know that sounds a bit confusing, but when I say urges, think of them as like your second little voice down there. Your lower brain's kind of like hinting at you that you need to binge. Don't argue with it, because arguing with it is engaging with it. You want to not give that lower brain a voice. You don't want to even talk to it. Just brush it off your shoulder. You don't want to engage. Arguing, think about it, if you're arguing with another person, eventually you give up because you're like, oh, this person is never gonna believe or never gonna see things the way I see it. So you just give in, you stop trying to convince them. That's the same type of thing that's gonna happen if you're arguing with your lower brain. Like, having that internal battle is not gonna help you out. It's hard not to give that voice attention because sometimes you don't even realize that voice is the one talking to you. You might confuse it with it actually being yourself and not your second little voice. Learning to differentiate who you truly are from your lower brain is definitely a key aspect here. I find that things that my lower brain tells me all the time is, oh, just one more time, or oh, you didn't have lunch today, so just eat a bunch of snacks. It's like the little devil on your shoulder. Think about your lower brain being like that little devil on your shoulder, and your little angel is you, who you truly are. So that little devil's telling you things like, oh, you can just start eating healthy tomorrow, or start on Monday, just go crazy today. This can be your last one. Because if you think about it, after we binge eat, we realize, wow, I really did not want to do that. And your upper brain knew that, but the little lower brain devil, he was tricky. He was telling you that that is what you actually want. So I know this is probably getting confusing, but I'm trying my best to describe this, okay? Okay, number two, kind of tying into that and what I mentioned before, is accept that you're gonna be uncomfortable. You are literally changing neural pathways in your brain that have created this habit to stop doing that. So it's not going to be a walk in the park to just change your brain pathways. It might be a little bit difficult. You're going to feel down sometimes. You're going to feel like you're depriving yourself maybe if you're not binging. You're going to be like, well, it's not fair because I really want this, but you really don't. Just know that that's your lower brain telling you that you want it, but you as yourself as a person do not want to do that, and you know you don't want to do that. So focus on that. The feeling of feeling deprived because you didn't binge is going to pass. The urges are going to pass. These are all just emotions and feelings, and they will pass. So get accustomed to feeling uncomfortable like that and knowing that that uncomfort is going to pass. I want everyone to pause the video right now and write down a list of things or feelings and emotions that you would feel if you successfully dismissed a binge. So would you feel like happy, like, yes, I finally did it, I'm so proud of myself, I didn't binge, I knew I didn't want to eat that stuff? Or would you feel like, oh, I'm so deprived, I wish I could have eaten all that stuff, I wish I binged? What would you feel? Write that list right now, okay? And I want you to come back to that list daily, every day, okay? Number three, I think this is one of the most important things when you're trying to stop binge eating, is stop dieting completely. You cannot be dieting and trying to fix your binge eating disorder. You cannot be in recovery from binging if you are still dieting, because dieting is what causes binging. So it's just going to be a cycle. If you're restricting, it's going to end up binging, but then when you binge, you want to restrict. So that's where the yo-yo dieting comes from. You cannot diet if you want to truly recover. I know that might be scary to some people because I know some people are just so used to dieting all the time. You need to be eating enough, because if you're not eating enough because you're dieting, your brain is going to send those survival instincts to you that you need to eat more. Your brain, it just wants to keep you alive. Like, it is not the bad guy here. You're not crazy. Your brain is not the enemy. It's literally trying to keep you alive. So you can't be restricting and dieting, because that's just going to confuse the hell out of your brain. The more you diet, the more it leads to more urges, because you're in that survival mode still. So stop the dieting, cut it out. You need to make sure you're eating adequately. You need to be eating enough food. So try adding more food to your meals. Have bigger meals throughout the day so that you don't feel like you're being deprived and like you need to binge because you haven't been eating enough food. Those are definitely the top three things that I think everyone needs to work on if you're trying to stop binge eating. But I also have a few extra little tips that have helped me. So staying busy is one of the things that really helps me, because it distracts your brain. You're thinking about something else. Stay out of the house, go get busy, go do stuff. Number 5 is to find a passion or find love for other things like art, friends, family, other things to like obsess over other than food. So maybe painting is your thing. So paint all the time, keep yourself busy with painting in your free time instead of eating, you know? Number 6 is to stop and think and feel those emotions. So this one kind of ties into more of emotional eating, but you need to learn to feel your emotions. Honestly, as humans, we are so used to getting rid of bad emotions and trying to always find good emotions. Be at peace with the fact that you are never going to be happy all the time. There's going to be days where you feel like crap and there's no reason for it. You just are having a bad day, and we need to learn to accept that we're going to feel uncomfortable sometimes. And another thing that helps is to create new habits to replace the bad habits. So example for one of my bad habits would be to, when I lived in Toronto, was to after class, I would pick up a bag of Reese's peanut butter cups from Loblaws because it was on the way home. Like literally every day I did this, and I'd eat them. Sometimes I'd buy 2 bags if I was feeling gutty, but then after I would always feel so bad. So finding a new habit to replace that one is the key. So maybe going straight to the gym after instead of going to Loblaws, or going straight to a friend's house or something. Just create a new habit to avoid that binge mentality that you're in. My camera's actually starting to die right now, and those are all my current tips. If you guys have any other tips, let me know. And I don't think basic tips like drink more water and don't buy bad foods are good, because it's not the certain food that is making you binge. Yes, you might have certain foods that are your trigger foods, but that's just because that's what your brain is used to. Your brain is used to those foods. You can totally eat your trigger foods in moderation. It is possible to do that. It's just your brain thinks you can't do it right now. So I don't want tips like don't buy your trigger foods, because yes, that helps short term, but restricting yourself from those trigger foods is going to make you feel restricted, and then you're going to want to binge on those trigger foods. So learn moderation. Moderation is definitely key to this whole thing. This is so much information, I'm like sweating, but I really hope this video helped you guys out. I know this seems so overwhelming, but try not to put too much pressure on yourself. My cat is meowing, my camera's flashing at me, the battery's out, I'm getting stressed. I'm gonna end the video right here. Honestly, I don't want it to be too long. More videos like this will be coming. Drop any questions you have below, or any video topics related to binging that you want me to cover, because I'm totally open to talking about whatever you guys want me to. Stay strong, my little warriors. Don't give in to your lower brain and your urges. Love you guys.